Yay, people are starting to come on. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome.
That's it.
Yay. Welcome to the Windy Storm End of Days.
Yes. E-mail niet graag, jawel.
I'm going to ask people to mute for now. You can say hi, but then mute yourselves. And
Hi,
then,
Reid.
hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being so flexible on all the wind and changing of things.
We're not flexible. We're disappointed.
Well, I know what that feels like. Because I wanted to see y'all in person. I didn't fly here to be on Zoom.
We drove for 2 hours to be on time in Amsterdam, which is easily to do. And then it's closed.
Oh
no.
Well, thank you for driving. I hope you're safe wherever you ended up being.
You're still in Amsterdam. But now we booked a hotel.
Well, thank you
So
for
we will
doing that.
decorate the cost. You will get the invoice tomorrow.
Zijn we online nu? Waar je net het inloggen?
Chat participants.
Heb jij de gegevens?
Okay, I'm just gonna mute people right now. How do I do mute all? Boop. There we go. And Matt, do you want to give them like 2 minutes to go get
let's
tea?
give them 2 minutes.
Yeah, because we still have people showing up and we're letting people in. So let's give you with 2-minute warning. We'll officially start in 2 minutes. So if you need to run to the bathroom or warm up your tea, please run, go for it. And we will officially start in a few moments.
Yes.
And is there anything I can be doing to help?
No, there's people that I don't know who they are, and when I ask them, they disappear.
Okay. You scared them away.
Yeah, I think so.
What can be exciting if you want is if you want to share where you're, let's see, most of you are from this area. So if I was doing this in America, I would be like, where are you in America? How about if you want to share in the chat, what is something that drew you to this class tonight or this conversation? Like what's a reason that you showed up tonight? And you can share that in the chat and people can say hi. And if folks are meeting me for the first time, we'll do introductions in a little bit. But I'm originally from America, still am. I live in Portland, Oregon. So you're welcome to share where you're from too, if you want to. Okay.
Just checking things.
Yeah. You do you.
I do me.
You're doing great.
That's right. I'm doing great.
I'm just going to mute for a moment.
Yep.
So I can have a secret conversation with Wilrieke.
Yeah.
One more minute, we'll start. I'm seeing Andre. I was just in Lisbon. It's a wonderful place. But you know that because you're from there.
You're unmuted, babe.
Okay, we got lots of stuff going on in the chat. People who are newish to polyamory. Okay. Let's... We'll begin in a moment. This is Wilrike's hometown, so I can't. It would be too bold of me to start the class. You type really fast.
Yep.
I'm amazed.
All right.
Ready?
Solve this later. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's happening, folks. It's starting.
Yes.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for making all the changes today.
Yeah,
As
what a day.
trees were blowing down here around in your neighborhood.
Yeah, they were. They were. We were so happy. Like, finally, we were so... Like, for the last weeks, it was like, can we do this? Is lockdown going to allow us to do this? And then lockdown was, like, lifted. And now there's a storm. So you managed to come all the way here. And we're still doing this online. It's like, oh my gosh, we had to change all these things. But here we are. And thank you all for being here with us. And being flexible with us. And being here online.
Yay.
Yay.
So a couple of things to just cover really quickly, because and we do want to say thank you for everybody for your flexibility. We're, we obviously do not have control of the weather and things like that. But what we're doing tonight, because some people who were gonna come tonight who couldn't come in person but are home with kids and things like that now because they're not leaving the house, we're recording tonight's call so that folks can watch it if they're not here tonight. So we just want to cover a few things about privacy. What we would normally say if we were all meeting in person is one of the agreements would be one of privacy. So like, you're more than welcome to go out into the world and share, your experiences and your stories, but please don't share other people's stories and experiences or out someone unnecessarily unless you have their permission to share their stories. And how this works in a virtual environment, and many of you probably have already figured this out because you've been in a pandemic for almost 3 years now, is that when we're recording things for people to be able to watch it later, now your privacy becomes a little bit different. And the ways that I have run calls that were being recorded, one way to do that is we're pinning our video, and so the recording that we will use for other people to watch is just going to be of us always. But when you have a question or you would like to share, ways that you can do that is if you don't want your voice recorded at all, then you can share in the chat. If you're okay with your voice being shared on the recording so that somebody else could be listening to it and hear your voice and you feel fine with your privacy that way, then you can unmute yourself and share, and that will be recorded, and so people will be able to hear your voice even though it's just going to be our picture. If you're really adamant and being like, but Reid, I want to be seen by the world, you could ask really nicely and demand it of me, and then maybe I'll edit your video in if you want, but it's a lot of extra work, and we just have a lot of fun stuff that we want to talk about tonight. So if you also have a question or a concern about your privacy, because you might be using your work Zoom account or something like that, you can also change your name. You can rename yourself if that helps you feel more comfortable in just this group, because people can go on gallery view and actually see, other people's screens. So that might be something else that you want to do. You also can be nerds like us and change, add your pronouns into your name field if you would like to do that. But when in doubt, if you have any concerns about privacy, lean into the chat, and that will be part of what we'll take questions and things from.
Yeah.
I ran out of breath.
Deep breath then.
Yeah. So. All right. So I think that covers our privacy piece.
Yep.
What would you like to cover or start with?
Well, I think the deep breaths are a good thing. Like every time you might feel a bit overwhelmed, if there's a lot of information, you can always pause, come back. Like we'll send a recording to all of you as well. So if it's like, if it gets too much, if it gets overwhelming, if you're like, I'm full, I'm done for today, you can always just, get out of this room, this Zoom room, and read or watch the rest later.
We have a question about people asking who would see this video outside of this group.
We don't know yet. That's the honest answer, I guess. We don't know yet.
Yeah. So also, if we're giving this recording to the people in the group, and they have a link to be able to view it, we also can't be responsible for who they share that link with or who is sitting next to them while they're viewing this. So why don't we, for the sake of simplicity, let's imagine that this recording
goes public.
And then I think that will help you set your privacy needs accordingly. But again, the only recording part we're going to be using is just of our screen, and then anyone who wants to unmute themselves.
Yeah, and if you add something to the chat, we will not mention your name.
Yeah, and we won't be saving the chat or publishing the chat at all.
Let's hope it goes viral. Yes.
Exactly.
Good idea.
Great.
All right. So here we are. Shall we start with who we are then?
Yeah, let's start. Do you want to what's the class? Okay, what's our talk tonight? What are we doing here?
Good question. So tonight we're going to talk about non-monogamy, open relationships, polyamory, like all the things you could wonder about when you tread beyond the monogamous realms. Basically, that's it.
Okay.
Right?
That's a lot to cover in a few hours.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to cover everything. Yeah. We have some ideas about what we want to talk about, and there might be a lot of questions or suggestions for topics for us to talk about.
Part of what we're wanting to do tonight, and if we had been meeting in person, part of the things that I like to do is there's some pieces we want to cover or some hunches we have of what some of the struggles and some of the things that will make open relating easier and healthier for people. We have some things we know we want to cover and talk about, but a lot of what we would like to do is create situations where it's more conversational and questions and sharing, less of like we're sitting on top of the mountaintop of open relationships and we have the stone tablets and all the answers, and that our ideas and perspectives are really just kind of our ideas and perspectives, ones from our own lived experiences, and also like as nerds and geeks who are trying to figure out like how do we do relationships better. So if there's something, especially I'll speak for myself, that comes out of my mouth and you're like, I'm not even sure I like him, and I definitely think what he's saying is wrong and doesn't apply to me, I really want to invite you to like throw out any of the stuff that doesn't resonate for you, and at least use the stuff that we talk about tonight to get yourself excited to go out and find the tools and perspectives that do really resonate for you. Like one of the reasons we're friends as facilitators is like we have similar values around like there isn't like one answer for everything. And it would definitely suck if I was saying my answer is the answer, and if you don't use it, you're broken. And if anyone ever shames you for not taking their advice, you can tell them Reid Mihalko said suck it and send them to me.
Yeah, I guess if there's one thing I've learned about non-monogamy is that I don't know everything, and there's always situations that are new, and there's always new things to learn. So yeah, and also, if you find out ways that do not work for you, that's amazing. That's great, because then that's not working. You might try something else.
We have another question just about like, but who are we going to share it with? I know we'll share it with everybody who's got a ticket for tonight for this talk. And then we haven't really thought beyond that.
No, because this is so fast, but we could imagine that if this becomes a really interesting conversation with lots of value, we might be interested in sharing it elsewhere to support other people on their path. Yeah.
Keep the questions coming.
Yes.
Where do you want to start?
All right. Well, I'm just looking to the left to our notes. But yeah, mingling is a bit hard when we're not in the same room and walking around.
Yeah, we can do a breakout room though if you want. Oh, we've got good questions already. Let's do it this way. So we can do a variation of what we were going to do in the group.
Oh yes. Yes.
Why don't? So here's the question for all of you. Is if you could, like, if we could wave a magic dildo and bop you on the head, and at the end of our hours together, you shut off your Zoom camera and you're like, oh my goodness, like I got the answer I was looking for. So like, what is a thing or the thing that if we could figure that out for you tonight, or if you could walk away with that piece of information, what's the thing that you would want from tonight's conversation? We could wave our magic dildo and boop, at the end of the night, you're like, yes, I figured it out. What's that piece? If that's too broad of a question, then another question would be like, why did you show up here tonight? Kind of what we asked at the beginning when people were logging on. Like, what was it about tonight that had you show up, or something that you would like to get out of tonight? And if you would like to share in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And we can invite, if somebody would like to unmute themselves, you can share. Or if you know how to raise your electronic hand, we can see that and we can call on you.
Yeah.
So it's also a small enough group that I think everyone's on screen. So you can also just wave at the screen and we can see you and we can unmute you. So why are you here? We've got people asking, where do I find my species? Hard question, since I didn't meet a lot of new people and changed a lot during the last years. Really hard to meet new people during a pandemic.
How to deal with jealousy or insecurity of yourself and of your partners. Great question too.
Yep. We already figured that question might come up, so that's a great one.
And also, if you have questions that are like super beginner questions, they are very, very welcome. And if you have very specific advanced questions, they're just as welcome.
Started exploring polyamory a bit more than a year ago and wanted to hear how other people are experiencing it. Great. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Is there anyone who would like to unmute and have their voice captured for posterity as to why they're here tonight, or what they would like if they could get their magic dildo to boop them in the head? And we've got Andre and Roni. Please unmute.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay.
Yep.
Last workshop that I attended, that you did last time you were in Amsterdam around this topic, you shared a few tools that I found very helpful that I would love a refresh on. Which one was around the different styles of relating. We had like the lonely wolf was one of them, and the other one was the 8-armed octopus of jealousy.
Sure.
Yeah, those are some of the tools that I was hoping to get a refresh on.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can totally cover. We can cover. So that falls under poly fit or poly styles, and how you found what's a good match for that. And then we can talk about the 8-armed octopus of jealousy and what the various tentacles are. Great.
Kind of
Thank you.
Continuing on that, I'll just is maybe like negotiating different styles both around sexuality and like romance or love, like, and how you might be like monoamorous or polyamorous, like kind of understanding a bit about that.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
I'll write it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you so much. Anybody else want to be bold and feel like unmuting? Because it is, I mean, I love the chat too, but it is nice to actually talk to people. We've got people asking about how about FOMO and trauma on fear of abandonment. Great. That's a great topic.
Yeah.
Sophie, I think you're unmuted, and I'm curious if that's because you want to share.
That's intentional, yeah.
Excellent.
I'd like to hear some about different attachment styles, so anxious, avoidant, etc., and how that works in polyamory or non-monogamy, and to kind of gain a shared understanding of that and the language around that.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm nerding out. Other people are sharing in the chat. I'm kind of lost in what kind of non-monogamous relationship would feel best for me. So I want to learn about those and see what feels best with as I had some recent changes in my relationships. Great. This is great. What a wonderful group. People just extolling each other's virtues in the chat. And then we've got how to know when not to talk, share, if you're an over talker. I am guilty of that sometimes. And how to be comfortable with taking up your space. Yay, great question. Thank you so much
writing them all down.
Not only do you type fast, you have wonderful penmanship. Okay, we have a hand. Maz?
Yeah, I have been in the process of overcoming a recent heartbreak. I broke up with a long-term partner and they cheated on me. Well, that's the story, and there was a lot of emotional unsafety. So I'm really curious on how to overcome that. Like the way my nervous system can actually go into overdrive at the moment when I'm starting new relationships.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that one. That's a lovely question, and my heart goes out to you for your dilemma and situation. But a lot of people, I think, when we first start thinking about opening up our relationships and dating multiple people, like one of the things we don't necessarily think ahead about is that can mean like you have breakups, you can get broken up with several people at the same time, like, and how do we, and just because you're poly doesn't mean that a breakup somehow hurts less because you might have other relationships. So thank you for speaking to that. That's a wonderful topic.
Is this the moment to introduce our Venn diagram?
I think we should.
I think we should.
Okay.
So you might know that we both are quite the geeks. We've been geeking out a lot over the last few days. And we came up with a Venn diagram where we think most of your questions will fit in. And I'll hold it close.
Yeah.
You can see there is the circle of self-expression. So that's about, finding your species, dating your species, finding like your shared values or the shared relationship style, like where you meet. And then there's this one, it says safety and needs. So things like attachment styles, past trauma, all these things go in there. And then there's one about communication, the magic word of communication.
Now, the reason, our challenge to ourselves when we were thinking about this, when we were having our conversations, so when you start thinking about what has people struggling in relationships, and for me, a lot of my journey into figuring out like who I am, like as a cisgendered white guy who thought he was straight for many years, and then, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not straight. What does that even mean? Who's also, I grew up in America, but like raised that if you really love somebody, you only love them. And that was also very monogamous, kind of based, heteronormative relationship structure and expectations. And that's how I was socialized. And then like me starting to figure out, well, I don't think I'm straight, so what does that mean? I eventually would figure out that I'm queer, and that's the word that I use. Me falling in love with two people at the same time back in college, and then being like, well, if I'm in love with Laura, then that must mean I'm not really in love with Lauren, because and it was Lauren and Laura, and if I was really in love with Lauren, then I wouldn't be in love with Laura. like a lot of my journey was trying to figure out what was happening and how was it that these things that felt so right to me were labeled as as you know, forbidden or wrong or broken in my culture, which, you know, hanging out with you, I'm like, kind of monogamy and a lot of the heteronormative things are very similar in across cultures. But me starting to figure out that I'm queer, that I'm polyamorous, and that I'm a slut, so I'm very promiscuous, like, how do I do that? And if it's hard enough to have one relationship go well, how do you have 3 or 7, or, you know, if you have a bunch of love, like, how do you leave the campsite better than you found it? And from my own personal arc and the family I grew up in, like, my mom and dad loved each other very, very much. They couldn't communicate at all. They were horrible at that. And that would lead to so much strife, even though they were very, very much in love. And so when I start looking at relationships, whether they're monogamous, whether they're poly, whether you're swingers, whether you're a relationship anarchist, whether you're kinky or straight or queer or any of these things, for me, looking at these buckets where people start running into problems, or where the friction and the extra work comes in relationships, it starts to fall into these buckets of self-expression. How do you create safety and get your needs met, and communicate what those are, and how do you work through communicating when you have a disagreement or you have different needs and values, and this idea of self-expression being like how relationships and love comes through you naturally. And our hunch, which we might be wrong on, is that most of people's strife and some of tonight's questions will fall into these kind of buckets. And it's not that we're trying to fit you all into a bucket. It's more kind of coming up with a framework or a visual for you to consider, so that when you run into trouble, you can be like, oh, well, what's not working?
Yeah.
Is this a communication thing that we need to, you know, I need to bone up on skills, or am I miscommunicating? Is this like my partner's not feeling safe, or I'm not feeling safe, or is it a needs thing? Or what I'll come down to, and one of the questions was dating your own species, is like, is the person that I'm dating or in a relationship with, are we just not the right kind of fit? And I'll dig into that a little bit later.
Yeah, or is it a good fit, but are we trying to create a relationship type that's not working? Maybe we're better friends than lovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, who are we to talk about these things?
No, I shared a little bit
You
about
shared
my
a little
life.
bit.
What
Yeah,
about you?
You did. All right.
Why are you sitting on this couch?
Because it's my couch.
Okay, it's your couch. Good.
All right. I don't know. When I had my first long-term relationship, I was 23, and I got pregnant really, really fast in that relationship. Like 4 months into that relationship, I got pregnant, and we had 3 kids within 4 years. And both of us, we were not even 30 years old, and we were both like, you know what? We have very little experience having sex with others or having relationships with other people. Is this going to be it? Is this it? Is this it for the rest of our lives? That feels really weird, to never kiss anyone else again, to never, you know, even cuddle anyone else again. That feels really weird. So then we basically started exploring, like, how do people do that? Are there other ways? And then we found that there are other ways. And then we spend a full year talking about the options, like what would work for us. And then we started playing with that. We started opening the relationship and dating others. And that's, I think, more than 10 years ago. And since then, I've tried so many things. I have dated couples. I had that partner and then a whole bunch of lovers of all kinds of genders. I was like the extra partner, or sometimes my partner and I had a girlfriend. Or I don't know. I tried so many different styles of non-monogamy, and I'm still on that path. I'm still exploring. And currently I'm in a relationship with Leon, with a woman, and we're figuring out what's working for us now. To me, my non-monogamy is not a fixed way. It's not a way in which I'm like, okay, this is how I do it, and this is how I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. But it's like always adapting to my needs or the needs of the people I relate with. Because I think in different times in our lives, we need different things. We have different curiosities and also different boundaries. I'm a person who comes with quite a bunch of trauma, with a very insecure attachment pattern. And I'm learning to navigate that too. Like, how do I navigate my own insecurities and my hurt while also feeling free and providing that to the other person too? Yeah.
Thank you. Other things for folks who are meeting me for the first time tonight. So my primary partner, Allison Moon, who's an author and also a fellow sex educator. We've been together for 15 years. So I'm somebody who I do really well with primary relationships. And in the way that polyamory and non-monogamy work for me is I'm also somebody who's capable of having like 2 or 3 primary partners, and right now it's just been Allison and I for quite a while. And for those of you who are newish, because there are people who are sharing and that they're part of the reason they're at this talk is they're here to gather information. There's a lot of different ways to do poly, and a joke in the polyamory community is if you asked 5 polyamorous people to define polyamory, you'd probably get like 8 or 10 different definitions. And that, for me, that joke, when I first started figuring out what polyamory was and heard the word and was so excited, because when I found the word, I also found around that time the book The Ethical Slut by Dossie Eason and Janet Hardy. I was like, oh my goodness, like here are people that are putting into words these things I've been feeling that I was feeling broken about. And a lot of folks, when you start dipping your toes into open relationships, it often means you're kind of deconstructing whatever the culturally approved relationship style of your time period is. And we joke about I'm in my 50s now, like kids today, they've got the internet. They find out about polyamory from TV shows, and queerness and gender's up for grabs now. But a lot of what's happening is some of you had to deconstruct what you were told was right to start to figure out what wasn't working, and then reassembling as an act of reclamation a thing that would work for you. And so part of this, which I think can be really helpful for all of us, even if we're like, black belts in polyamory, is realizing that deconstructing and reassembling, I don't think ever really stops. Like we're always changing and growing. And so we're kind of back to the first circle of one of self-expression, is always asking yourself, like, if I knew I wasn't going to hurt anybody, if I knew no one would be mad at me, how would I be doing relationships? Like, what would make me happiest? Or what are my fantasies, the things I think, I really wish I could have that. But like for me personally, one of my things is like, I don't think I deserve to be slutty and this queer and have people love me for being slutty and this queer. And that's like something I struggle with. But for me, that shame and the things that I don't think I deserve, those for me are the breadcrumbs that help me figure out the stuff I'm scared to be asking for. And so this is where these things start to kind of overlap, right? Because I needed to learn how to share the scary stuff with the people that I was attracted to, or the people that already loved me. And those skill sets to be able to share what you're ashamed of, what you're scared about, the skill sets to communicate when you share something vulnerable and your partner gets angry or surprised. And like learning whatever those communication skills are going to be for you, whether it's nonviolent communication, radical honesty. There's all kinds of different ways to find tools that might work for you. Nonviolent communication annoys some of my friends. Radical honesty
it's terrifying for some.
Yeah, for other folks, it's like
traumatizing.
Brad Blanton is a dick. I'm not going to use his tools.
Yeah.
And again, it's the invitation is to go find the tools that work for you, and to encourage the people that you love and the communities that you hang out in to share tools so that you can always be getting better and more courageous at sharing the things that you're most scared of. That is a lot of how I operate around relationships, is around my fears and my shame, and how do I exercise my muscles to be courageous and brave, and then date people who fucking love that I'm that way. Which also means, like, some people aren't a good fit for me in relationships because they don't want to talk about the elephant in the room. They are fine and love their lives better if we just ignore what just happened. And I grew up in that family, and I never want to be in that family again. And there is a certain kind of privilege that comes from you being a really good communicator and having a lot of courage. Like, don't wield that also as a weapon to people whose nervous systems they can't handle that kind of honesty. And I just want to drop that in because I think we also, there's certain kind of privilege that comes from you being relationship nerds. And it can be really frustrating if maybe you're in a small town where nobody else goes to workshops. So, we can talk about that a little bit more when we start talking about, like, where do you find your species? Do you want to add anything to those things? I also felt like I just talked a lot.
You did.
Okay, I'm going to shut up.
But that's fine. Yeah, I think also one thing to add is that I think both of us, we are the types of people that use relationships to get to know ourselves better, and who use relationships to actually practice the things that we're, the things that we want to develop. Like you were saying, that you basically use your relationship styles to practice dealing with your shame and dealing with, like, am I allowed to experience all this? So it's also a certain way to harvest non-monogamy, to use it as a tool for growth, I guess. And that might not be the same for everyone. Like, other people might not be this geeky about it. They might just want to have lots of relationships and have, like, this flavor on Monday and that flavor on Tuesday without bothering too much about the growth, right?
I guess. I don't know. I had a lot of growing to do. So this was going to be my journey anyway. But yes, I mean, if you find everyone and it just fits and it's easy, like, more power to you. And I do think that every once in a while there's going to be challenges. Yeah. But yeah.
For sure. So just looking at some of the questions, we've got quite some questions on, like, what style or what type of relationship would work for me? What kind of person fits with that? Am I mono polyamorous or solo polyamorous or promiscuous polyamorous? I don't know. There's so many styles. And what persons fit with that, and where do I find them?
Yeah. Do you want to offer some ideas and thoughts on this?
Yeah, so let's start with, there's different starting points. You can be on your own, and you can start as a single person, right? And you can start as a couple. So those are different places to start from, and I think that also, that determines where you start from, right? And it determines either you're looking for something by yourself and you're figuring out what you want by yourself, or you're doing that with a partner. So the second version, like when you're with a partner, it probably starts with communication and checking out what are your safety needs and what are my safety needs, which is also a conversation I would have with myself if I start with this on my own. It's simpler on my own. What do you think? It's a different starting point, but then where you can go is the same things.
Yeah, I mean, if you're opening up a relationship that you're already in versus you're single, and you're like, oh, I would like to explore multiple relationships at the same time, like the in the monogamous paradigm, they would call that dating before you get serious with somebody. But I would always go back to the home base of like, what are my needs, and what do I need to include so that I can feel safe? Because there's a whole other conversation around as the world and especially with polyamory, like we're getting more savvy about conversations about trauma, being more trauma informed. Attachment theory is now something that's really hot in the non-monogamy world. Jessica Fern came out with a book called Polysecure, and it's taking attachment theory and applying it to non-monogamy. But starting to understand yourself as to like, what are the things that make me feel unsafe and really wreak havoc on my nervous system, and or because you might be like, I don't understand what he's saying, which might mean that you feel pretty safe, generally speaking. Like me I'm a big white guy, I've got 2 black belts, like I feel kind of safe in the world. And the kinds of trauma that I have from my family don't necessarily wreak havoc on me in the ways that some of my friends who have, you know, challenges around trauma. But me understanding trauma more and understanding nervous systems and how to regulate myself, how to help co-regulate with my friends and loved ones, that allows me to show up more in situations when they're challenging with a greater understanding and more tools for how to navigate those things. So when you're starting to open up things, thinking about, well, what are my needs that I'm trying to get met, and what tanks of mine, what needs tanks might be low, because generally speaking, if you're pretty resourced and your needs tanks are full, shit doesn't rock you as hard. Right? Totally. You have more resiliency.
Totally.
And those conversations with your partners, if you're opening up the relationship, for me, as a fear and a shame nerd, I'm like, well, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? Is my partner going to fall in love and leave me for somebody else? What are the things I feel ashamed about, my desires and my wants? And then I'm trying to get clarity on those things so that then I can have a conversation with my partner, in this case Allison, or even like my other lovers. I want to try to have some sort of cogent conversation with them and not just try to have this big vulnerable conversation when I have no clarity at all.
What I've been practicing and what I could recommend to everyone, like whether you start this as a single person or in a relationship, is I have written this kind of like relationship negotiation with myself. It's like almost like a contract where I've written down like why do I actually want a relationship? Like what's my intention and my motivation to step into a relationship? Like what would I like to get out of it? Some desires. A big chapter on deal breakers, like what could happen in a relationship that would make that I'm out. Like for me, it's for example lying or having my boundaries pushed on a constant base, or someone not tolerating my children. So what are my deal breakers? And then there would be certain things like this is what I would need for safety. Like to me, safety is priority. I've had enough trauma in my past, and I know for myself that I have a strong need for safety. So making sure that the people around me know that and how to help me actually feel safe in a relationship. I've written that down. So it's like a user manual. And I give my user manual to people. But I write that before I go into a relationship. So ideally, I write that when I'm not in a relationship, not in love with anyone, not dating anyone, but on my own with myself. And if I'm in a relationship and I would like to open that relationship, I would still do that on my own, because I'm the type of person that if I know what my partner wants, consciously but also subconsciously, I'm adapting to their needs. So I forget my own boundaries a little bit, or maybe a lot. I forget my own desires because, I'm people pleasing. It's a bit codependent. I'll try to avoid any potential struggle that might be there. I will try to avoid any discussion because, you know, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of emotional abuse and where my needs were kind of met in a violent way. So I would not have needs and wishes and desires. So learning to write them down by myself without my partner looking over my shoulder or anyone else who might have a stake in what I want or don't want. None of them in the room, like literally none in the room, writing them down. And if there's other people, they might do the same thing, and then we might swap. Or we might go through them together and see, it's another type of Venn diagram, are we a match here? Like, are my needs things that you can provide? And the other way around, does that work? And then we can take it from there and see if it's a match.
Yeah.
So that's homework I would recommend to everyone.
It basically starts to turn into a conversation with yourself around clarity and the things that you know about yourself that generally speaking, if they are present in any relationship you're having, that relationship tends to go better. When I teach the Dating Your Species workshop, we talk about like what are your win-wins, what are your deal breakers, and then there's another category called 3 strikes. Like what's an area where people have a couple of opportunities to get better at it before it's just obvious they're never going to get to the level you need them to be. And then there's an area called wiggle room, which is stuff that's not your preference, but if it's really bothering you, it means something else isn't being handled in the relationship. But those win-wins can be really, really huge for folks, but we don't think about that in the old paradigms because so many of us were like, wave to the camera if you know somebody who grew up in a really fucked up family. Like, doesn't have to be you, but like, do you know somebody? And it was just a weird fucked up family situation. So many of us grew up in places like that, and what we want is we want to do a great job in relationships. So like there is a natural place of when you're in love with somebody or even just friends with somebody, you want to please them because it's an act of kindness too. But the warped version is if we don't have clarity about what we need, our people pleasing starts bulldozing over our needs, and then everything starts to get really unhealthy. And I want to ask Leo, you put up your electronic hand, and I don't know if you have a question and you want to unmute yourself, or if you were just raising your hand because I asked people to raise their hands or wave to the screen. So I just want to double check. So you can unmute yourself and ask a question or say something, but you can also just let your hand down. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting about you.
Let's take a breath.
Let's take a breath. Some of what we're talking about tonight is going to feel like, goodness, like it's just communication and self-awareness and telling people what you need. And if they're unclear and can't meet your needs, then maybe we're not supposed to be dating. And you will be right. That's kind of what it starts to boil down to.
Yeah.
Because one of the challenges people get into in relationships, whether it's monogamous or non-monogamous, is we fall in love with good people who end up being horrible fits for us. And sometimes we fall in love with or have chemistry with somebody and we want to help them get good enough at relationships to be able to have a relationship with us. So you kind of become their coach or their therapist, or if you've heard about like, I'm dating a fixer-upper. And so you're...
Een opknappertje in Dutch.
What is it?
Een opknappertje.
I wouldn't even try to pronounce that. I was going to try and it would be horrible. I would butcher that phrase. But like, we end up like waiting for the other person to catch up. And in polyamory, if you're trying to have 3 or 4 relationships maybe, and you have a pattern of trying to save people or help them grow so that they can be at your level, what you end up doing is you make your life 3 times as difficult.
Yeah, you will. Yep.
And the reason I'm saying that is I love helping people. That's why I'm a teacher. I try not to date people who need me to be their teacher. And so for some of you, the way you will make your life easier is to charge all your friends money for all the help you give them. And then start having relationships with people who don't need your help. And that can also be really scary, because if they don't need you, why would they be with you? And now we start to get into this interesting area of what an actually like healthy relationship is, where it's not codependent, but it's I think the word is interdependent. Interdependent.
Yeah. But it requires us to let go of the old narrative that a successful relationship is a long relationship and you never abandon them and you stay together no matter what. Like, we have to break down that idea of success. And for me, I really had to break that down, especially when the father of my kids and I broke up and we thought we would get old together and then we didn't. And now I noticed that there's a different idea of success, that if it doesn't work, so if we're not a good match, or if someone is, breaking my deal breakers, that I'll be like, you know what, thank you for this experience, I'm out. And so I have like, for me, over the last years, that means that I've had several relationships of a year. And the fun thing in polyamory or non-monogamy also is that, to me, it brings out my patterns, because it's just not the data is, there's more data, there's more people that I have interactions with. So my patterns will be mirrored in my face again and again. And I might make different choices. Maybe I wasn't as good at finding the people that are a good fit as I thought I was. That's one of the lessons I've learned. I've dated amazing people, but they were not a good fit.
So another thing, and then we'll like dive into another question, is the thing that you're talking about. So I have another Venn diagram, and I'll put a link in the chat in a second. But so when I teach dating your species, we call it the Venn diagram of misery. and the first circle is the old metric for success in relationships was always duration. The longer you stayed together, the more successful the relationship was. And really what that should be is depth and being real with each other. So dating somebody or starting a relationship, falling in love, and then realizing 3 months in, oh, wait a minute, like, I don't think we're a good fit. Or realizing, 2 weeks in or three months in or whatever, like, oh, you keep overstepping my boundaries. This is not sustainable. This is not a good fit, because I'm communicating what my boundaries are. You say you understand what they are, and then you break them. And at some point, I have to say it's not even that you're a bad person. It's like, this is a bad fit, because there's somebody out there who doesn't have this boundary that you can go date and not fuck with them. So we need to transition a relationship. And so rather than duration, it's depth. So if you figure out sooner that we shouldn't be together, that is success. But that's a very different way of looking at relationships than many of us were raised with.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had the experience too that I was relating with someone, but it was like the job description for the position that they took was not matching the criteria that they met. Like, I wanted something else that was on the table. So then you can either, like in the old paradigm, you can either break up with someone, like fire them, or compromise and be like, okay, if I was an employer and you were my employee, I could leave you in this position, in this job, and just compromise the outcome. Or the third option is that we have a conversation and see if there's a better position for you. So maybe the position is not my partner right next to me, but maybe the position is lover or friend. So there's not this black and white dichotomy of like either we're partners or not, or you're in my life or you're not in my life. But maybe there's a better fit for you in another place.
So that is actually a genius move. Like that's a black belt move.
Yeah.
Because
Thank
then
you.
it's like, so the question is, so the boundary, like let's say, can you whip out
I can give
example?
I can give an example. So one of the things I need in a partner, if I'm with someone who's in the position of my partner, it is feeling included in their life. And feeling included in their life means that I'm welcome in their home, that if there are big decisions to be made, who's going to go on holiday with who, where is Christmas being spent, that I'm at least an equal voice with the other people in the constellation. That didn't happen in this relationship. That didn't happen in this particular relationship. We talked about it. It didn't happen. And then we renegotiated and I said, you cannot be my partner because I have other needs that are not being met in this position. So I'm proposing that you're going to be in another position and I find other people that actually meet these needs because I have these needs and I have them now. So I want this place to be vacant. I don't want you out of my life, but I do want this place to be vacant so I can fill it with someone else.
So you didn't fire them; you just moved them to a different department.
That's what I did.
Like
That's
Bob,
what I mean.
you're not a good accountant. I need a good accountant. We're moving you from accounting to shipping.
Yes.
And then you'll be much better fit.
Yeah, because you're way better at putting stamps on envelopes than on numbers in a computer. So I'm not trying to make them put numbers in a computer and just let them have fun putting stamps on envelopes.
Okay,
Right?
that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in like taking from where we are now, and I'll start. I think we want to chat about styles of polyamory, but I'm really interested to hear back from folks, like things that we've been talking about, like what's been useful so far. If you want to share like an aha moment that you're having or something useful in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can wave at the camera. And if you want to share something that's been an aha moment so far, because I think that can help. And also encouraging folks to share your aha moments, because sometimes you'll put into words or into text, you'll share something in a way that is actually the aha moment for somebody else. Like not only like as a teaching nerd, you sharing what you're getting helps anchor it for yourself, but often the words that we'll use or the phrases we'll use, you'll say it in a different way, and that will be the aha moment for somebody else. So there's also like another layer of value in sharing. So is there anyone who wants to share in the chat or unmute something that's been useful so far? And that is Thierry, please.
Thierry, yeah. Hi, Reid. Hi, Wilrieke. Hi, everybody. I'm noticing tingling sensation in my chest and in my belly. Now that I've opened my mic, I haven't spoken before. So what I'm experiencing is that everything that you're talking about, you're explaining, you're shining the light on is like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course you do. Writing down your boundaries, your needs, your desires, your wishes, what you don't want. And then I found myself being in love, head over heels. You know what? I completely lost it. I wasn't able to stand up for myself, being scared shitless of losing that woman I was so much in love with. So, to cut a long story short, I had to go back to the drawing table. I had to recollect myself in a way that was like, what the fuck? What's going on here? So the point that I'm trying to make, all the mental and the theory, the concepts, yeah, for sure. But how do you integrate them when you're in either a codependency, you're, in any situation that you cannot integrate this conceptual part, this theoretical part that I think all understand so well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's where I am now. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
Yeah, so how to do all these things when you're in love or when you find yourself in a codependent state, maybe triggered,
Yeah.
something like that.
My quick answer, which is, I want to preface it, this is easy to say, it's hard to do. I try, because I love falling in love. And I love having crushes on people. Like, I go to a retreat or a festival, and I've got like my one or two like festival crushes. And I know when they walk in the room, I see them, and even though I'm trying to play it cool and like not let on that I know, I'm tracking them. And I know this about myself. The things that I have learned or have to continue to practice, and it doesn't mean that I get it perfect, is I try to slow everything down before I fall in love. Because when I start really getting like high on somebody, and we have some fun research now, it's been around for a couple of years, that basically shares from MRI scans of the brain that the centers of your brain that are active when you're in love are the same centers of your brain that are active when you're high on cocaine and addicted to cocaine. So basically, you're addicted to your cocaine dealer. And so I try to make sure that, and the drug analogy isn't going to work completely, but like, I try to make sure that I am in an appropriate place and with the appropriate people to get stoned because I know I'm already going to be compromised and I shouldn't be making large life decisions and renting the U-Haul. I don't know if it's U-Haul over here.
The Vuistwagen.
Yeah, like how many of you know somebody who went to a festival or retreat, fell in love, and then rented
wanted to move over right away.
and then moved in with them like the next month? Like, that kind of love overtakes so many of us, and it feels amazing. So how do you figure out ahead of time if we're a good fit before we start getting head over heels? You know your boundaries on paper, but what I try to do is make sure that if I'm attracted to you, I'm already having conversations about boundaries and self-expression, because if I start losing my mind for you, hopefully we're a good fit. And what it used to be like was I was attracted to people who were like my parents because I wanted, one, I felt like I knew you my whole life. You were like, this was because you were my fucking mom. I knew my mom my whole life. And what I wanted was I wanted a different result than what I got with my parents. So I was unconsciously drawn to people who were like whatever rupture I had in my life so that I could have a success this next time. And, it was therapy and a lot of workshops helped me realize that pattern. And then I started doing the work I needed to do to untangle that. And then what happened was I still am attracted to people like my mom and dad. I just don't date them now because I'm also attracted to people that are a healthier fit for who I really am. So I don't know, Theory, if this is really like this might not be the answer for you, but it's trying to figure out what things you can do so that you're more conscious and also equipped to not choose those people. Because there's somebody for them that is a better fit. And it's clear, it's clear to me that some of my choices that I'm drawn to aren't actually healthy for me. Mm-hmm. So I have to work on the skills to not pick people like that. I hope that's helpful.
I can come from a different angle.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I really don't like falling in love. I hate it, basically. Because to me, when I fall in love, it's like red flags start like the alarm goes off. Because I know that when I like really get attracted to someone, like it's explosive and like really I fall in love in a festival, wherever it is usually because it's an unhealthy combination. It's usually because I miss something, or I have missed something in my life, whether it was my parents or a past relationship, and I project that these people will be a magical fit. And I know, because I collected the data from the past, I know that when it's like, then that's what's happening. So what I do when I notice that I fall in love that way, when I know it's a festival crush, for example, I might enjoy it, but I will give them the caveat, like, this is what's happening. I'll probably have a lot of emotions, and there might be a lot of trauma coming up because I'm being touched in these deep places, because if I wasn't touched in these deep places, it wouldn't be this explosive. So what I usually do, yes, I slow down. And what I usually do is I have a conversation with myself, because it feels like, to me, it feels like when I'm centered, like it's like I'm being a tree, I have my roots, I can, move around and I can talk to people, but I can let them go again. I can dance with someone, even kiss or play with someone, let them go again. Then I feel centered and grounded. But when I fall in love, I lose that center and grounding. And I'm like, I lose the stability. And now I know that that's what happens. So what I tell myself is, this will pass. This will pass. When I go at it with that speed, when I am able to rent a U-Haul and move over to the other side of the country, redesign my whole life, I seriously considered, how can I spend half of my life in Spain in a hippie community to be with this person who apparently was a terrible fit afterwards? Even though I have my company and 3 kids in the Netherlands, and I actually can't even go away for 1 weekend a month. I tried, that's the extent it goes to. So I tell myself, this will pass. This will be a couple of days. I'll be like, it will be my cocaine. It will be a couple of days like that, and then it will calm down. So for these 3 days, I'm just gonna keep breathing, intentionally take time away from this person, intentionally find some friends who can be my support, that know me a little bit, that maybe know my emotional landscape a little bit, maybe know my patterns in relating with others a little bit. I often have a friend like that on festivals, and she'll be like, oh, Wilrieke, there you go again. You can have fun, but you know what's happening, right? So I'll find some people who help me ground, and that may be a friend on WhatsApp that I can share with them, like, oh my God, I'm having all these intense feelings. I don't know what to do with them. Can I just tell them to you instead of like going at this person? And no big decisions, definitely no big decisions. And I'll wait until it comes down until I actually make my mind up about what I want with this person. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's actually wise to not have sex with them or play with them or start a relationship with them, because it's just repeating the old pattern that I know how it will end. Because usually my pattern is finding someone who's unavailable in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So I will be disappointed at some point because I want someone who's available. And these things usually happen with people who are not available in the ways that I want them to.
Can I speak to these
yes.
pieces? So since we're talking about festivals, and I know, like, in America, we do festivals, but not like you all do. You all kick ass at festivals in a way that Americans, we suck at. So one thing to think about is whenever you meet somebody in a heightened container, like it's an event,
a play party, a workshop,
a retreat, a workshop, where like people come and they're not in their 9 to 5, day work week thing. Like it's vacation in a certain way, or it's exploration and self-work. When you're in these containers, the intimacy can be really deep and really fast. And to understand, like, this isn't the real world. And so anything that happens in this container is heightened, and it's just, the drugs are really good. And understanding that what happens at the retreat should stay at the retreat. With a caveat. If they are your soulmate, they will be your soulmate 90 days from now. So, like, go get high and then get sober again, and then start a sober conversation about what do we want to do with this. There's for those of you who, if you're like, well, I don't really go to festivals, so how does this apply to me? The day-to-day version of this, for me, back when I was just starting to figure out I was non-monogamous, I wanted to date a lot of people, I was bartending in New York City, I was like, because I was gonna be monogamous and marry my high school sweetheart, and then I fell in love with 2 people, and then didn't know what polyamory was, but I thought, they're both so awesome, if they just meet each other, then somehow we'll figure it out, because they'll see how awesome they are, and then it'll all make sense. A horrible idea, because they were monogamous and this made no sense. But it was the beginnings of me, at least I was honest with them. But eventually what I had to figure out was I was okay with seeing all these people, and I was meeting really wonderful people and having wonderful sex, and then, like, let me cook you breakfast. And these were people who were like, oh my God, if you're cooking me breakfast, you must really like me. But I was just a slutty guy who also loved cooking breakfast for people, because we just had sex and I can cook pancakes and this, let me feed you. I was giving people all these mixed messages. So eventually what came out of this was something called the Casual Sex Protocols, which I'll put it in the chat, but it's readaboutsex.com/protocols. But it's a checklist of things to think about that might help you delay how you start to fall in love or bond with people. Not because bonding's bad, but if you start falling head over heels too fast, too quickly, we all tend to, like, lose perspective and that groundedness. So that can also be helpful, like that slowing down, that having conversations with yourself, like you were saying, having support people to help you, remind you, like, that was a festival. You always love falling in love at festivals. If they're meant to be the one, they'll still be the one 3 months from now. Sober up and then start the conversation fresh.
Yeah. And one thing that might be in these protocols, I don't know, but one thing that could really work, well, it works for me both on festivals but also in new dates, like new people that I'm meeting, that I interact with, is to talk with each other about what's the meaning of this. Like, for some people, having sex means we're in a relationship now. For other people, means we're having sex, you're out of the door before breakfast. For other people, it might mean, like, I really want to cook you breakfast, and then I'll go home, and maybe we send a message in a few days, and that's it. We're not in a relationship. So what the meaning is, it could be really interesting. And in I see someone speaking about new relationship energy, or maybe when you're on this cocaine high with someone, it might be really hard to actually know what the meaning of all of this is, because maybe you do want to get the U-Haul and, move in with them. But for practical reasons and not hurting someone, I think it's a great conversation to have to talk about what's the meaning of this. Like, are we open to explore what this is going to be later? We don't know. Or is this like a closed container? Is the agreement like this is sex at the end of the play party, the end of the festival, the end of the date? We go our separate ways and that's it.
Yeah. And that kind of clarity, some folks don't want to have those conversations because they're afraid, well, if I have this conversation with you, why would you go on a second date with me? Or why would you even answer? Like, if I put all this in my dating profile, why would you even want to date me? And my advice is that with the clarity that you have, put it out there if it works for your privacy settings, right? Because maybe you need to build some trust before you really start opening up. But share your clarity sooner than later. Because if you sharing what your needs, wants, and desires are scares the other person away, they were never going to be a good fit for you. What I think is a better use of your energy is when it's appropriate, share what your wants, needs, boundaries, and desires are. Because what you're looking for is somebody who's like, holy shit, like, that's really exciting. Tell me more. Like, tell me more about your boundaries. Like, I want to hear about your boundaries. I want to understand your needs. Like, you want people who are not like rolling their eyes being like, oh my God, boundaries, communicate. Like, you want somebody who's like, no, I understand why this is so important. And when you're done, I would like to share with you what I have learned about myself and what my boundaries are. And then you're having a conversation and people are interested in those kinds of conversations. That's some of what you're starting to look for. It has less, some of you will be like, but Reid, how am I going to find somebody that I have that kind of chemistry with? And I'm like, one, is it the kind of chemistry because you're trying to get a redo from your parents, or coming at it from this perspective of what you actually need and want. When you meet people who are into sharing their needs and wants, of those people, who do you have chemistry with? That's a very different way of approaching finding people. The old way was, I'm hot for you, you hot for me, let's give it a go. And this is a much more, it feels like it's a lot more work, and in some ways it is, but the payoff is way different than spending 2 or 3 years or 18 months in a relationship that ends in a train wreck.
Yeah. It's like I've been through these processes, and it really it's like you say, it pays off to this pays off. And what's the desire with the relationship? Like, if I really want to build up something with someone, I have noticed that it works better to build a friendship with someone first and then decide, hey, this could be a relationship. So first we figure out that we actually communicate really well, and then we open up then I notice like, hey, actually you're really cute. On the other hand, I might just want to have real hot, steamy sex. And then I don't care how you communicate, because I just want to have hot, real, steamy sex. So then that attraction with all the fireworks might be really nice. So for me, it really helps to know, like, what's my intention with this relationship? Where do I want to go?
Yeah. And then if you're like the hot, steamy sex situation, are you picking somebody who's a good fit for that?
Yeah.
Are you creating the right kind of, or an appropriate container for that? So that, I mean, a lot of people have never had like a wonderful one-night stand. And a lot of people have never really had the honor or the fun of having a really great fuck buddy. Would you call it a fuck buddy in Dutch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, until you meet somebody who's that kind of fit and you're both on the same page, it's really hard to know what that feels like and what a healthy version of that is.
Yeah.
And that can be tricky. It's why it's really useful to have community to share. Like, so what's it like when you have a healthy casual sex relationship? Like, you like pick people's brains who are having success in these areas to be like, so how do you do it? Like, what makes it work? Because they might have tools and ideas that help shorten your learning curve. And kind of coming back around the long way to different kinds of poly styles.
Yes, I wanted to go there. Let's talk about those in the refresher on the wolves and the dolphins and stuff.
So here's how I do it, or here's a way. It's not the way, but a way to consider it. So when I first found out about the word polyamory, if you know how to spell polyamory, I thought we should date. Because I didn't have other people in my life who knew what polyamory was. So I was so excited to find other poly people that I was like, we need to date. You know what poly is. And then I had a lot of confusion because there were these wonderful people. We were both poly, but it wasn't working out. It was like, you know, dating another queer person. I'm like, we're both queer. Why is it not working? And so through some conversations with some of my nerdy lovers, we kind of came up with this idea of like, well, are we the right kind of poly for each other? Are we the right kind of fit? And then another one of my friends and I were like, oh, well, let's kind of figure out what this is. Like, let's come up with some ideas. And we came up with 4 basic styles of doing poly. There are many, many more, but as an introduction, let's just say there are 4. The one way to think about poly is like you're more primary wired. And so your life as a non-monogamous person works better and has more ease in it when you have your primary. When you don't have a primary, something's missing. And that's like one version. A second version is what my ex-lover Beth called fixed pairs. And what she meant by that was, her analogy was like, you're primary wired, but it needs to be more than one. So it's kind of like, her analogy was like, it's like you want to have kids and you have your first kid, but then you're like, oh, one's not enough. I need a couple more. And then like you have 2 or 3 kids and then you're like, oh, okay, I think I'm done. This is enough. So fixed pairs are kind of people who are drawn to maybe having like a throuple or quad or their open relationship works better when they have their couple of besties. Another way to think of it is how some people run their friendships. Like some people just want one bestie. Some people need like 2 or 3 besties.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. People are asking for a break. I'm going to let Reid finish this piece, and then we're going to have a little break, okay?
Yeah. I can do this in 5 minutes, and then you can think about it while you pee. So then another way, another style might be people who are more like dolphins or pod poly, which is you're just happy when everyone's together. So you have a bunch of lovers, maybe your primary or whatever, but like when all your friends get together, things just feel better. And then the 4th one that Roni had mentioned is the lone wolf. And that's the person who maybe they have a primary or maybe not, but they need their alone time. And then they come back to the relationships they want to come back to. So that might be for some people like solo poly, where they just feel better when they're single, but they have other relationships. Maybe they're not primaries. And those 4 categories can be a great place to kind of start thinking about what has you feel really good and grounded and like is your base camp for relationships, because it's not always just having a primary. That doesn't work for everybody. But for other folks, I'm great at being in a primary relationship, but I need my pod of dolphins all together. And so different styles fit or complement each other.
Or clash.
Or clash. But if you're dating somebody who's primary wired only, and you want to have 2 or 3 primaries, they might feel like, no, that's not cool. Like, it's just us.
Or when you're a couple and you start dating and you are primaries and you agree to be primaries and you date someone else who actually is primary wired and wants a primary, it can feel like they're trying to steal one of you away from this primary relationship.
Yeah. So again, these are just things to think about as we go on break, and then we can take questions. And while we're on break, I'll read all the delicious comments people are leaving. How long of a break? What do you want to give people?
Shall we do 10 minutes? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 past 9. We start again.
So 10 past 9.
10 past 9.
Enjoy your break. Yeah. And you can just turn your cameras off or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in 10 minutes.
All
Ready,
right.
set, go! And I'm going to hit pause on the recording.
And mute. Yes.
There we go. It's being resumed.
We're back.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for asking for a break.
It's on the other camera now.
It's on the other camera?
It's on the other camera now.
How is that? Hang on. We'll put it to the better camera.
Now you can see your microphone.
Oh, that's my microphone. How unprofessional. There we go.
There we go.
Aha! Well done.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good cup of tea or pee or whatever you've done.
As we kind of come back from break, does anyone want to share? Oh wait, we're still on the wrong camera.
No, we're on the right. Whatever.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to share?
Yeah,
That's what I said. It's like a comedy show here, folks. Does anyone want to share an aha moment or something that's been useful that they were thinking about or that occurred to them when they were on break? Because we can kind of it's fun to hear from other people. You can share in the chat, or if somebody wants to unmute themselves, we would love to hear from you. Who do we have? Anyone? Oh, great. Fanny. Thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We were on
Yeah.
camera before.
So I'm really completely at the beginning of non-monogamy and this kind of stuff. But I'm interested in it, and I really am convinced that we are not monogamous, so that it's not logic. And I have a past of real codependency, only codependent, pleasing, only narcissistic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm healed from that. I'm also coaching people in that, but still attracting. So I recognize still attracting that kind of people, type narcissists, psychopaths, but not dating them. Yeah, and if you, so I'm completely open. In this moment, I don't have a need for one-to-one relationships. And in my past, it was very strong. Now I have a very strong feeling of relating with groups. So the group of my speakers club, my water sport club, my dance club, my tantra club, and it fulfills me. So I am committed to groups. But if I develop and you talk about that for basic poly styles, I am mostly attracted to the lonely wolf, but I don't know what it means. So, but it makes me happy to have such a style like a lonely wolf. So because I have a need also what Wilrieke said, that I will lose myself very, very quickly. So I need that alone time. So it really makes me happy if there is a style of lonely wolf that I can have a lot of alone time, but also relating, and also have sex. So maybe you can tell more about how that can look.
Great, thank you for that. Does anyone else want to share before we touch a little bit more on the lonely wolf? Any ahas? Things that people want to share that's rattling around in your head from what we've already covered?
All right.
Going once. Going twice. One more time for our shy and introverted friends. Take a deep breath. Some sound. Blah. So around, like, if you're feeling like, ooh, I think I'm a lonely wolf, a great analogy that Beth came up with when we were talking about these styles was, think about it like if you're invited to a wedding. So the fixed pair kinds of people are like, well, like if Wilrieke and I were primaries, well, obviously we're going to the wedding together, and then we're going to sit next to each other. We're going to, at the reception, we will eat next to each other, and then you're leaving with me.
Yeah.
And then if we're both fixed pairs, or I'm great with partnering with a fixed pair person, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. Like,
Let's go, the three of us.
I'm not all bristled, right?
Yeah.
So primary wired, it's like us alone, great. For fixed pairs, it's like, well, let's get a hotel room together, because all 3 or 4 of us are going to go together and sit together, and then, we can see our friends, but we're going to leave together, right? For pod dolphins, I'm like, let's get a limo or a party bus. Let's all go together or meet there. We'll push all of our tables together, and if they won't let us move the tables, like, at least we'll meet on the dance floor. And then, let's get a hotel suite together and have an orgy or whatever it is. For lone wolf, and my partner Allison's a lone wolf, Allison would be like, go rent the party bus. I will meet you at the wedding. And if I'm late, I'll definitely see you at the reception. So for Allison, like, Allison having her space to do whatever she wants, that's Allison. I would never tell Allison, like, no, we have to go together, because unless I really needed that. But for me, I partner really well with lone wolves because it doesn't bother me. Like, I know that you're taking care of yourself, and you taking care of yourself and taking your space is how I know our relationship's doing well. Because for somebody like Allison and I work best when Allison puts her needs first. It's not that she doesn't consider me, but if Allison didn't take care of what she needed because she's a lone wolf, it would get really weird for us. And I need her to take care of herself. What's wonderful with our relationship is Allison, being a lone wolf, is also a pack animal. So when Allison needs a pack, I have a party bus filled with wolves. Like, come on, we got it. And so, like, again, these are just ideas. Maybe you're a penguin or whatever, but thinking about what really is the right or best fit for me. Mm-hmm. And then dating people where you fit good together, and maybe what you need in the relationship that you have co-parenting with is different than somebody who would just be a lover Like maybe you don't need them to be primary wired if they're just your friends with benefits. So again, these are just things to look at and start to understand and think about, where does the bristling and the friction come from, and to look at like, are your styles a good fit for or complementing each other? So I hope, Fanny, that helps give you some more context to that.
Let's move to another animal.
Great.
The octopus of jealousy.
Octopus of jealousy, yes. I put a link in the chat where you can download a free little map of the octopus of jealousy. And just to kind of do a refresher, I have a whole online class for the octopus of jealousy with a workbook and all the things. But a basic way to look at jealousy, and again, like, I don't know how it would be here in the Netherlands, but like in America, we are taught that jealousy destroys relationships.
Oh yeah, it's a green monster and you shouldn't have it. And if you have it, it's bad and you are not evolved.
Which is very different than like Latino culture. Jealousy is how you prove your passion and your love for each other, right? So in America, we don't have a lot of skills for dealing with jealousy, because jealousy is like bad and should be avoided because it destroys everything. Something to think about is that jealousy, when you're feeling jealous, it's a dashboard light in your car telling you to check the engine. It doesn't tell you exactly what's happening. It just says, check the engine. And when you're feeling jealous, the way that I teach it, and the way that Dr. Beth, who also helped me when we were creating the Poly Match and Poly Fits, we started talking about jealousy, because Beth had a lot of jealousy, and she's a nerd, and she wanted to understand where it was coming from. And she is a research scientist, so she researched all the research science about jealousy. And what we started figuring out was, like, there was 8 basic categories of the ways people were studying jealousy. And I was like, oh my God, it's an octopus. So if you go and you go to the link and download the map, it'll basically just point out these 8 different tentacles. And if you think about these tentacles as, when these tentacles get tugged or tug on you, it might be a certain combination of them that trigger you feeling jealous. Almost like, it's like a chord on a piano. Like, it's a certain, like, 3 keys that make you start to feel jealous. And that each one of these things, none of them are wrong. They're just how the world works for you. And in polyamory, there is a little bit of shaming that, like, if you were really poly and really evolved, you wouldn't feel jealousy at all.
Yeah, fuck that.
It's bullshit.
Fuck that.
Yeah, it's bullshit. So understanding what triggers your jealousy can leave you clues for what your needs are underneath each of the tentacles, so that you can try to get your needs filled. Maybe from the person you're dating, or maybe from your friends or community or your other lovers. But when you think about your needs, for a lot of people, if all your needs are being met, most people who have all their needs being met aren't necessarily feeling jealous about their partners having another date or something like that. It can be different for everybody, but it's a way of looking at jealousy to see if you can start to figure out how to understand how it happens for you, and then how you can get your needs met in ways that might make you more resilient and feel less jealous. So the basic 8, there's possessiveness or control or the idea of feeling special. A really great example is, Wilrieke, I heard you call your other lover my pet name. that is my name. Pookie Bear is only mine, and you should never say it to somebody else. And so that's a funny example of that is special. This thing is how I feel special and know I'm special to you. That our favorite restaurant, why would you take somebody else to our favorite restaurant? That makes no sense. And now I'm jealous. And so like that can be a clue to be like, oh, so like that's about like specialness and possessiveness and control in a certain way. The other tentacle number 2 is insecurity, which is you feeling insecure, not about yourself, but about the relationship. Like, you know, if the relationship feels rocky, or maybe it's just new, it's new and fresh, and you don't know if it's secure yet. When that tentacle gets tugged, maybe you might be more prone to feeling jealous. Loss is another one. For some people, change and losing a relationship or loss in another part of their life can put them on edge, and they might start to feel jealous about other stuff. You know, I had a date planned for Wednesday and they had to cancel, but you're still going on a date. So now I'm starting to feel jealous because I lost my date, or whatever that is. That also comes into fairness and equity, which is another tentacle, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Rejection. How much does rejection have you feel wobbly? For some people, rejection is like not a big deal. For other people, it means a lot. So if it means a lot, it might be a tentacle that has some power over you. And if you're like sitting here being like, rejection, why would that make somebody feel jealous? It's probably not your tentacle. There's loneliness. If you're feeling alone, or like you haven't seen your person in a long time, so you're lonely for them, then you might be more prone to jealousy if and when that tentacle gets tugged. Or maybe it's when loneliness and loss and feeling special get tugged all at the same time, then you feel jealous. Tentacle number 6 is fairness and equity. This one is a really interesting one for all kinds of relationships, because remember, monogamous people feel jealousy too. Some people feel jealous at work. So jealousy can show up in a lot of different places. But fairness and equity is a great conversation to have with all of your friends and loved ones about what's the difference between what's fair and what's equal.
It's a very useful conversation if you have more than one kid as well.
Ooh. Well, please illuminate us who don't have kids around that piece.
Well, for example, I have 3 kids, and they might all want to have like the exact same amount of my time. Like it's not fair if I give 10 minutes to one kid and then 8 minutes to the other 2. But maybe on a day that one kid is feeling super sad because something happened in school and they need lots of hugs, or they feel sick and they need lots of hugs. They need more of my time and my care and my hugs than the other 2 need. I'm still there for them. I'm still being available to them, but it might not be the exact same amount of numbers of minutes.
Yeah. It's a great conversation to have, because you might be in a situation where you're in a relationship and somebody's like, well, you went on 3 dates this month and I only got to go on 1.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. And you're like, well,
you got to have sex and I only kissed with them.
Yeah. I'm like, so what are we doing about this? And like, they're feeling jealous that it's not fair, or is it that it's not equal? You know, go and kiss 3 people and then we'll be done. And they're like, that's not what I meant. Well, what do you mean? And digging under that can just, you can understand things more deeply, and then start to see, well, what's the need?
Yeah.
Because the need might actually not be that they need to have exactly as many dates as you have. But until you can kind of get under the tentacle, it's hard to get clarity, and then have a conversation about what those needs are, and then how can you support them in getting those needs met, because it doesn't have to be your job solely. The last 2 tentacles, are on the octopus of jealousy, but they're actually more about envy. And the distinction between jealousy and envy can also be really useful for people. Jealousy being, like, let's say Wilrieke is, I mean, I can do it with professionally. You know, you're going on this fabulous retreat, and then I'm jealous that you're going on the retreat. I want to go on the retreat, and I don't want you to go on the retreat. Versus envious, which is, I'm really happy that you're going on the retreat, but I want to go on a retreat. In poly, it would be the I want to replace the person. I'm jealous of the person going on the date with you, or you got to sleep, you got to do that sexy, kinky thing with that person, and I want that person out so I can be the person doing it. Envy is, oh man, I wish I was getting flogged. I want to get flogged. I'm fine with you flogging that person, but I want to get, you know what? I don't even want you to flog me. I'm going to go find somebody else to flog me. I want to get flogged. So knowing the difference between jealousy and envy can be really huge to figure out what's actually going on. Those last two tentacles around envy, there's feelings of inferiority, self-concept, which is like you're insecure about yourself in this relationship, because the relationship could be solid, but your own inferiorities might be the tentacle that's getting pulled. You compare yourself. Allison used to compare herself. She's like, Reid dates all these bendy tantra people, and I'm this butch dyke. Why would he ever want to be in a relationship with me? And I'm like, honey, like, I'm poly. I love my butch dykes, and I get to be with the tantra people. Like, I get to have both. But I don't want to live with my tantra people. I want to live with you. I want to go to the festivals with my tantra people. So, you know, inferiority can be a tentacle that gets tugged. Last but not least, longing and scarcity. There's not enough time. You know, you have all these other relationships, so time's being taken away from me. That can be, you know, that can tug the tentacle and be about envy. Or scarcity can also be tugged with loss or rejection or something, and now you're having jealousy with a little soupçon of envy. So that's the basic map, and we'll kind of leave it there. But as you notice these things, start looking for what are the needs underneath, that if those tanks were full, that tentacle wouldn't have so much pull on you. Make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Let's take a deep breath. Because there's this whole bunch of questions around trauma and attachment and fear of missing out and abandonment and all of that. And I would love to touch some points on that. It's a huge topic. Like, it's an enormous topic, and we're just going to get to touch a few of those points, but let's try, okay? Let's try. I see there's even a new question coming in. So for me, if you ask me, what's the one thing that is under, like, where we need more emphasis on in open relating and polyamory, it would be safety. And for everyone to feel safe in the relationship. Because, you know, I'm also a person who loves to do kinky things, and I love personal growth. And what I have learned is that we can only grow, and we can only do things that might be edgy, and trauma for me is edgy area. We can only do that when we feel safe. If we do not feel, or at least safe enough. If we do not feel safe, all we do is survive. And if we're lucky, we'll survive when we come out of an experience. But if we're unlucky, we might make the trauma bigger, or we might create trauma, or we might re-traumatize ourselves. And that's not what we want to do. Like, that's not why I am in open relating. So for me, it's always about, how do I feel safe enough, right? How do I feel safe enough for me to explore with other people, for you to explore with other people, or for me, if I'm solo, for me to start playing with you, while I know that you might also be playing with other people. And for me, there's also two different things. Like, me playing with other people, it will touch different parts of fear, different parts of trauma, different parts of my attachment system than the people that I'm attached to playing with others. Now, one thing that's quite interesting, and if you already mentioned Polysecure by Jessica Fern, it's quite an interesting book. And one of the things that I really like in this book is Jessica Fern, she makes a separation between attachment-based relationships and non-attachment-based relationships. So attachment-based relationships are the relationships, well, basically where your attachment system switches on. So that might be a partner or a friend with benefits, or, you know, people that you have an emotional connection with. And she also says an attachment-based partner is someone you can actually ask for support when you feel unsafe or when trauma comes up. So someone you would, you know, come back to. Someone who catches you when you fall. The non-attachment based relationships would be like casual lovers, or maybe fuck buddies, or people you meet at a festival and then you say goodbye to each other again. It's not a person that once you get triggered, they're not the person that you go to for support. So it might be really interesting to make that separation between your relationships, or to look to your relationships and see what they are based on. And if you consider someone an attachment partner, like an anchor, like this attachment anchor, if they do that too, like maybe you find that this person that you want to come back to them to create more safety, whereas they do not see you in that way. And that will create a lot of unsafety. So I'm the kind of person, I need some people that I can create that safety with. Like I am what you would say, I guess I'm kind of like a primary wired lone wolf. But I am primary wired. I love to have people around me that I can go to for my attachment needs. And personally, I am that person. I'm both avoidantly attached and anxiously attached, a bit more anxiously attached. So I get insecure really easily when my partner or the people I have an attachment-based connection with date others. So I have this trauma on abandonment. Someone asked about the trauma on abandonment. For me, it's really easy. If we would be partners, you say, hey, I'm out on a date. I might sit at home and be like triggered or like anxious until you're back with me. And then I might be really anxious until you've told me what happened. And I might have like these huge stories in my head of like, oh my God, what would have happened? And what's the impact on me? Will you still love me? And how to deal with that? It's hard. I find it hard because it goes so deep. It is what I'm learning now. Like I cannot give people like, this is how to deal with it and you'll never experience it again, because I think this is a lifelong process. And by now, like playing with this for over a decade, I kind of like gave up that this fear of being abandoned or this anxious attachment, that it will ever be completely gone. That I will be fully securely attached and that I will never be triggered when my loved ones date others. It will never be fully gone. But what I can do is get better at dealing with the emotions that come up and get better at creating enough safety for me to actually be in this relationship. And what I need to feel safe is probably going to be different for everyone. So next question could be like, how do you know what's safe for you? Like, what's safe for me? What's safe for you? How can you figure that out? Well, this is one of the things that I was talking about before, about this document I make with myself. It's like, I like to study myself. I like to see the patterns and certain things that I need for safety. For example, is the people that I have an attachment based with, to be honest about their desires. And to explain a little bit, like, what does it bring them if they date other people? Like, what's the needs that they have that they want to fulfill with other people? So that I don't have to fill in the gaps and think like, oh, I'm not good enough. They're finding it with others. If I know that someone, like my partner and I, we're both quite the dominant type. My partner also loves to have a sub and to really dominate someone else. I might not be a good fit for that, because I will just, try and be like, you're going to dominate me? Well, let's see how that's going to go, right? She might have a need to actually dominate people. I might have a need. I'm not as lesbian as she is. I am definitely not lesbian. I love a male body every now and then. She's not going to fulfill that need. But when I am clear, when she tells me like, you know what, I just want to dominate the fuck out of someone every now and then, it's so much easier for me to have her have that experience because I want her to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that she's going to have this experience not because she doesn't love me. It's actually because she loves me and wants to do other things that make her happy too. And the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Can I just make a thing? The thing that's resonating really strong for me is also that for you and your primary right now, like you're building that secure base.
Yeah.
It's something that's being talked about and being checked in about, like, do you want, like, I would like to securely attach to you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we have a conversation and see if this is, if we're on the same page about this?
Yeah.
Versus what I think a lot of people do is we start attaching because the relationship, the chemistry or the whatever,
or
situation.
Even the escalator, like the expected steps.
Yeah.
We're dating a lot, so now I'm attaching to
We're
you.
in love, and now you're my attachment base.
Yeah.
And like, unless you're talking about these things, these are all assumptions, but you're still like, we're still doing all the things. It's just that it might be happening to somebody who's like, no, like, I don't want that responsibility. And also it might be like you're both not the right fit for those jobs. Back to the job positions, right?
Yeah.
And that piece, like having the conversations and both agreeing and testing that fit out, that really changes what's possible and how we can show up for each other.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And also what I need with my attachment base, so the partners that I form this attachment bond with, is an agreement that I know I carry trauma and I know it will come up in open relating. It will come up in any relationship, especially in non-monogamy. So I want them to know that that's going to happen, and I want them to know, and I want to know that they're game for actually dealing with the situation that inevitably will come up sooner or later, and that inevitably there will be situations that we did not expect to happen, and that we will make mistakes. We will be triggered as we go, but how do we deal with that? So I had that this week with my partner, where we were both really tired and didn't feel really well, and we are actually deepening into that, being each other's attachment base. And then at some point she kind of like stopped communicating with me, and she messaged me kind of like, give me space and be there until I come back. So I was like, yeah, I'll be here. I'll send you a friendly gif over Instagram or cute kittens and send you hearts. She asked me not to share much about my days because it was too much. I did all of that. And then after 2 days, she said, what I actually needed was for you to step into the car, tell me to cut my bullshit, and just be there with me. And I was like
drive to you,
like drive for 2 hours, come to my house, ask someone who knows where I am, and just come over. And I was like, that's great information. Thank you. Not feeling like, oh, I fucked up. I didn't do that. I didn't read your mind. Rather be like, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing this. Now I know that's how you work. Now I know next time you stop communicating, I'll just tell you. I told her, like, next time I'll just jump into the car. Is it a good idea that if you actually don't want it, just send me a red square over WhatsApp and I'll just turn around and go back home? But if you don't send me the red square, I'm coming your way, right? So we learn as we go, and we make new agreements as we go.
And ideally, if you're having all of these kinds of conversations and everybody's a good fit, like ideally, like I need you to jump into a car, you're not like, please, you're like, I am exactly that person. And then you have joy. Or, you know, in the more trauma pieces, like, this is where, like, starting to become more trauma informed for yourself, and also understanding how useful and important and powerful these pieces are. You can then have a conversation with people that you might consider dating, like, hey, so like, what are your views, or do you know a lot about trauma, and do you feel like you're trauma informed?
Yeah.
And if you have things that you need, and you're dating somebody who's like, oh no, trauma's bullshit, you should not go on the second date with this person, because how the fuck are they going to be a good fit versus somebody who's like, oh, I, share with me what your situation is and how that occurs to you, and if you want, like, I can talk to you about like my panic attacks and how this happens and what helps me with these things. So now what you're doing is you're sharing, when it's appropriate, because this can be really tender, vulnerable stuff, maybe not first date stuff, but like you start building relationships, whether they're romantic or friendship or community based, with people who are like, like trauma fucking exists in the world, and here's how I deal with it. What are your needs? And I can show up in these ways. Like, I'm actually really good at showing up specifically for this piece in this way. Would that be a good fit for you? And then everyone, when the shit hits the fan, you're surrounded by people who unplug the fan.
Yeah.
Rather than complain that you have trauma, which just is even more damaging.
It is. And now, like, coming back to this example that I just gave about driving over to my partner, like, we congratulated each other, like, hey, this comes up, it probably means our relationship is deepening, because I notice for myself, every time a relationship is deepening, a new wave of trauma and shit and attachment issues come up, and it's actually a good sign. Like, I've learned it's actually a good sign. We're deepening, let's celebrate it. So we congratulated each other, like, gosh, I found out I actually really love you, and we're deepening, and we managed to get through these situations, even though I did not step into the car because I didn't know. But we managed to get through, and actually we're closer now. And then I was sharing with you, because we are both these nerds when it comes to these processes. And then you asked, how many days did you take? And I was like, well, it took like 3 days to get through this whole thing. And you were like, that's amazing. And we were like celebrating, experiencing, like, being with the trauma. And to me, that's perfect, to have my partner and my support people celebrating and encouraging and celebrating, like, wow, you noticed something, you got through something, and you supported each other dealing with trauma and actually healing maybe bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
Because the alternative is then you put all your energy into avoiding triggering each other ever.
Oh gosh.
Or never having a fight, or avoiding difficult conversations, which then just is not how life and relationships work.
No.
And
no, you would be walking on eggshells the whole time.
Yeah.
Probably. And start compromising parts of yourself until there's so much compromised that there's not much left. Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to say on that? That's a whole workshop.
Oh yeah.
It's a whole life. That's a whole festival.
It's a whole fucking life. It's a lifestyle. Yeah. Well, touching on this one, I think is the one, the question that says what to do in a long-term relationship when all trauma comes up, and the open relationship is actually the trigger that triggers that old trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, like, don't try to go at it alone.
Yeah.
It sounds so cliche, but like, if you can afford it, because not everybody has the means, but we're the ones who are fucked up with healthcare. You might have better healthcare here, but like, getting support, having a therapist, going to see a couples coach or therapist or counselor, like it can be really helpful to not have the burden always be on your partner and you to figure things out alone.
Also, you have blind spots between each other that you will not find.
Absolutely. So, like, one thing when old stuff's coming up is, have you considered getting support?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you're opening up a relationship or stuff starts coming up because, like, maybe your partner starts dating or falling in love for the first time. Like Allison has seen me, like I have my crushes and my deep, long friendships and my casual friendships that are sexual with people. But the first time Allison saw me fall in love, she was like, whoa, like this looks completely different than the other kind of love that I fall into. And she was like, huh, okay. It now, in our situation, it didn't trigger her, but it was palpable for her. And if something had come up, we do have built into our relationship that any one of us can hit the brake. It's not a veto, but it's more like we can slow things down or call a timeout to have a check-in. And I think the hardest piece in certain relationships is there is a kind of couples privilege. And for people who have veto power, which can be really useful for some people, whereas like we have in our relationship permission to stop another relationship, and I can veto you dating that person or seeing that person. I don't, my goal if I'm working with people is to try to figure out how to, it's okay to have that, but to really build the resilience in your relationships where you don't shut down somebody else's thing. Because one of the things that can be really hard is like if with Allison, if I started falling in love and she had old trauma come up, it's kind of like falling in love to like that kind of love to me is like trying to stop a parachute when you've already leapt out of the plane. Right? And so for my partner to need me to stop being in love because it's kicking up old wounds and trauma, it's almost an impossible feat. So,
and it's not helping because the underlying trauma isn't spoken to, and the next time it might even be worse.
And that's why like I would almost always immediately consider how can we get support for whatever's coming up. And it then becomes also a conversation about needs and then understanding like what is the trauma, because maybe stuff's coming up you didn't know was there. So I mean it's so complex. I don't know that we can really give you any actual answers other than slow things down as much as you can, get support,
and find that safety. Like what do you need to feel safe? Like
it's a great question.
It's a great question. And indeed, like when trauma comes up, it's depending on so many things. Like what's your background? How did you grow up? What's the relationship you have now? Like there's too much influencing this to give one answer to all of that. How would you deal, Reid, with the fear of missing out, FOMO, in open relating?
So FOMO, fear of missing out, usually falls under envy for me in a certain way. But one, on a good day, I come at it from a place of abundance. So one, I have a life where there's really cool shit happening and I don't get to do it because I have to be a grown-up sometimes and I'm missing out on it. What I note for myself is, what is the thing I'm missing out on that I really want? And then how can I create or ask for that and kind of design it or plan for it in the future? Because, you know, like I have adult responsibilities and some of you have kids. I don't know how you be poly and have kids. I don't have kids. I can barely have a dog. I can barely have a dog. But like when I had the fear of missing out, I'm like, ooh, there's something in that is important to me or something that I would like to experience. What is it? And then how can I build that into something I want to experience soon?
It's back to that nourishing those different bowls of needs.
Yeah. So I
mean, what are all the plans?
Like that would be mine. And also just understanding, like, for some of you, you will have so many cool things going on in your life with so many cool people. You have an abundance issue now. you literally can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
You can't fuck everybody all at, unless you're all going to pile on each other. But like, there's just, you have to start using Google Calendar and prioritizing things.
Yeah, and I think it's also when you step into this realm of non-monogamy that, what you say, you will not always be everywhere. So to approach it with compassion and be like, this is part of the life that I choose, and it's going to be there. It's going to happen sometimes, and maybe it sucks, and we can just, I always do this movement. People who know me have seen me doing this all the time, like stroking my own chest. It's like, oh, here's the feeling again. I wished I could be there too, but I'm not. And just be there with compassion with that. Because it's going to be part of having an exciting life with lots of things happening. For me, I also have FOMO when I am with my kids and I cannot go to that cool festival because I'm with my kids. And I can also acknowledge that it really sucks that I'm not at that festival and still choose to be with my kids. But be like, it does suck to not be at that festival. Let's have ice cream tonight and be with the kids.
Well done.
So before we have a few more minutes, there's one question that I'd like to end with, and I know we haven't dealt with all of them, and we promise you because this is online and we're a bit sorry that we're not all together in one room, we decided to do another gift bonus session in a few weeks, and we'll let you know when that is. We're going to do another recorded 1 hour something Zoom session, a Q&A. So the questions that we haven't dealt with, we will collect them and put them for that session. But the one that I wanted to end with is the dilemma, or like, how do I do it when on the one hand, I want to have a big pod of lovers and sexy friends and do all these things. And I'm afraid that I'll scare the fuck out of people with choosing that lifestyle. Maybe those people don't want to be part of my pod. Maybe those people think I'm slutty for doing that. And it's pretty much a similar question to the question, like, how can I be comfy with taking space? How do I take space to do all the things that I want? So how to balance, I want all this, I want this abundance, I want this pot of lovers and sexy friends, and I'm afraid that I scare people with it.
Well, I mean, do you want to answer it?
No, you go for it.
Okay.
You go for it.
So here's how I did it. I got really clear about what I was pretty sure I wanted, because again, like, sometimes you're trying things out, you're not sure if you're right. But when I started, I needed play parties because I started realizing I like threesomes and group sex a lot. and eventually I would figure out, like, oh, this is actually, like, group sex to me is like being a musician. Like, I have to play music. I'm happier when I'm jamming with other musicians. Jamming. So what I needed to do was start hanging out with other musicians who like to jam. And when I started embracing my sluttiness and my polyamory, there were people in my life who were very monogamous and very conservative who didn't want to be my friends anymore. And so I lost friends. And I'm the child of an alcoholic. I was a really awkward, goofy kid. So, like, people not liking me and me not people pleasing, like, those are triggers for me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it was really painful to lose my friends because I was risking being myself. And what ended up happening, you know, I told my friends, like, I'm a queer polyamorous slut, and they're like, fuck you, that's wrong, I can't be your friend anymore. But then, like, somebody else some new person would be like, what did you just say? And I said, I'm a queer polyamorous slut. And they're like, I am too. We have a lot of them in the next room. You're in the wrong room, sir. And so by putting it out there, which was really hard and vulnerable and really hurt when I lost friends, I started finding my species. Like, this is the beginning of Date Your Species as a concept in a workshop. And so what I started needing to do was find the watering holes where my species was at.
Where the sluts would drink.
Where the sluts would drink, yes. Yeah. And then the great part about sluts is sluts know more sluts. And so then all of a sudden you get to meet a bunch of people. In a similar way, we're not here to recruit you to being a slut. But like when you start being vulnerable and courageous and vulnerable enough to share what you really want, you might lose some people. But the people you start to find, they might still not be the right date, you know, for you to date and have a primary or whatever relationship with. But these are people, for the most part, who will not be upset at you for wanting these things that you want.
Yeah, and they might be great friends, and they actually might have friends that you do want to date.
Boom. So again, just because they can spell polyamory doesn't mean you should date them. Yeah. But maybe somebody that they know who's poly might be the right fit for you. The way the story ends is almost every one of my friends that left me years later came back into my life because, and thanked me because they saw me being what I said I wanted to be and being happy. And me giving myself permission, what they got from it was permission for them to be themselves, which most of them weren't being. There was something that they weren't being courageous about. And so I ended up inspiring those people, and almost every one of them has come back into my life to be a friend again and apologize, which felt really great because it really hurt.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of my answer.
And they might not become sluts, but they might become people who are more of themselves, and then you relate in that area because you're unapologetically yourself and you meet there.
Sometimes what you end up doing is you scare people away because they're not ready to own their own self-expression, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And you doing and building the life you want, or at least trying, because it doesn't guarantee that you will have your orgy island or whatever it is. But at least you're living the life you think will make you happiest. And I think that's a worthy thing rather than walking on eggshells your whole life.
Oh yeah.
Trying to fit into something that culture told you.
Wow. I think that's a beautiful way to end this for today. Let's take a deep breath. Yay to being unapologetical. Yes. Here. So we're going to close this meeting for tonight. As I said, I know there's a few questions unanswered. We're going to collect them. We're going to email you, just the people who signed up for the Friday. We're going to email you with the recording of this session with some links. And we'll come up with a moment in the near future where we're going to do this bonus session, this bonus hour of Q&A. If you can't make it to that, because Reid will be in the US again by that time, so it might be in a time that's inconvenient for you, you'll get the recording of that. If you still want to meet us in real life, the storm is almost over. Tomorrow, the play party. I'm sorry it's sold out, but I know maybe some of you will be there. Maybe we will see some of you there. Hey! And then if you want to see us, there are still some tickets for Sunday. So if you feel like you want to come on Sunday to do the Body Curiosity workshop, then you're very, very welcome. It's going to be really amazing. We're designing it. It's going to be really yummy. So if you're like, but we didn't get the opportunity to see you in person, there is an opportunity on Sunday.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to put in the links, the readaboutsex.com/protocols for the casual sex protocols, but we'll throw them in the email with a link so you can click on it.
Yeah, and we'll put the name of the books that we mentioned. We mentioned
Jessica Ferns.
Yeah, and this Ethical Slut. We'll mention that. And if some other cool things come to mind, we'll put them in the email too. We'll send them early next week, so give us a few days for that, and then.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being flexible, and I hope that the choice for us to move to Zoom just kept more people safe, because trees were falling on cars and stuff over here.
It was really scary today.
So we apologize for the weather, even though it wasn't our fault. Thank you so much for showing up on Zoom and for your amazing questions and in the chat. And I look forward to seeing, hopefully, a lot of you on our little bonus call when we get that scheduled.
Or later this weekend.
Yeah. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. See you.
Bye.
Bye.